I want to emphasize, Mr. President, that it is a resolution. It's not a bill. I also want to emphasize at the outset that it only applies to the Senate. It only applies to the United States Senate. And here's what my resolution would do. It would change Senate rules to provide that when we are in a shutdown, that senators cannot be paid, cannot receive their salaries. Their checks would be, think of it this way, Mr. President, locked in a vault. And once the shutdown is over, the senators could pick them up. Now, if I think everybody in the Congress knows what I'm about to say, may be a bit cynical, but it's true. If I were king for a day, I'm not, and I don't aspire to be, and I wanted to avoid shutdowns, I would do two things. I would provide that members of Congress can't be paid during a shutdown, and I would provide that members of Congress can't leave Washington, D.C. during a shutdown. Now, I can't pass the second part of that. So I'm going to try to pass the first part of that. This resolution, again, it's not a bill, is about shared sacrifice. And I'm not doing it to punish anybody. I'm not doing it to try to embarrass anybody. I recognize that there are varying degrees of wealth among United States senators and their ability to go without a paycheck. I know and like every member of this body, and every member of this body has grown, who has a substantial amount of wealth, has achieved that wealth through their own hard work. And most, if not all of them, started with nothing.
The U.S. Senate faced a moment of raw truth today as a resolution was introduced to do something virtually unheard of in Washington: hold politicians financially accountable for their own failures. The proposal was simple. If the government is in a shutdown and the American people aren't being served, senators shouldn't receive a paycheck. The argument centered on the concept of shared sacrifice. While 260,000 employees at the Department of Homeland Security and thousands more at agencies like FEMA and the TSA go without pay during shutdowns, members of Congress continue to collect a salary that is 3 to 4 times higher than the average American's. The resolution didn't seek to take the money away forever, but rather to lock those checks in a vault until the job was finished. The message was clear. If you don't do your fundamental duty to fund the government, you shouldn't be the only ones immune to the consequences. Should politicians get paid while the rest of the country suffers through a shutdown? Today, a shared sacrifice resolution hit the Senate floor, and the reaction was unbelievable. We're talking about a plan to lock Senate paychecks in a vault until they actually do their jobs. But wait until you see the ghost objection that shut the whole thing down. This is the definition of a double standard.
I've seen Senator Mark Warner's house. It's bigger than a Target. More power to him. He earned that money. He started from nothing. So did Rick. But this bill isn't about that. It's about shared sacrifice and sending a message. We've got about 1 squillion employees at the Department of Homeland Security that aren't being paid. And there is no prospect of them being paid. The Democrats have offered to open every part of DHS except ICE. I would gratefully accept their offer. Let's get them open, immediately. And then the very next day, we should start a budget resolution through reconciliation. We should pass a budget for the rest of ICE, the rest of the DHS. It's not open. Now, I would welcome my Democratic friends involvement in that, but I know they can't vote for it. We could do this through reconciliation as we've passed the one big beautiful bill. We've got 2 more shots under the rules of reconciliation. It would easily be sustained in a bird bath. It would not take 60 votes. It would take 50 votes plus the vice president. That's how we passed the one big beautiful bill. So before I call on Mr. Marino and return to the subject, I really think we ought to surprise ourselves, Mr. President, and do something intelligent if we really want to get this government back open. We could have it open within a week. The Democrats I think, will find that acceptable, and I believe Republicans will find that acceptable if we would just do it. I would like to yield a few minutes to my good friend, Senator Marino, about my resolution.
My colleague will yield for a question.
Of course.
So, to all the senators here, I'd ask you to think about a couple of concepts that come from the private sector. I remember the 2008 financial crisis as follows. It was a situation where any day you would think we're going to face total and complete bankruptcy. I had mortgaged everything I owned in my life. I'd maxed out my credit cards. I took out loans so big I couldn't even do the math in my head. I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning wondering how I was going to make payroll. My wife would say, "You okay?" I'd say, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm fine." And I think, Mr. President, you've been there. And I had to ask my team to make a lot of sacrifices. We had to cut pay. We had to make a lot of adjustments because it was a matter of life and death. Either the business was going to survive or we were going to collectively perish into the great abyss of bankruptcy. And there's a concept that's important in creating a culture that says, as a leader, you must be willing to live in the shared experience of your team. Now, I will contradict a little bit of what you said. Each of us in this chamber make $175,000 a year. That's not what the average American makes. That is dramatically more than the average American makes. And it's certainly a lot more than what the average TSA worker makes, what the average FEMA worker who's got to go out and help places all over the country. I saw the very sad storms that Hawaii is seeing, and I hope we get help to those people. But it's not going to be me that goes there. It's going to be the hardworking men and women of FEMA that go there, and they make a fraction of what we do. I can't imagine having a job in which for the third time in 6 months, you have to explain to your wife or husband or kids, "Hey, I didn't get a paycheck today." And the kid's looking at you going, "Well, what did you do? Like, what did you do to not get a paycheck? Were you insubordinate? Did you not show up for work? Did you yell at your boss?" Nope, I did everything right, other than work for the Department of Homeland Security. Why would you stay in that job? And I think that's the thing that we don't understand is people have breaking points where they just say, "I'm just not going to work here anymore." And this particular agency, more than anything else, has a very simple charter to protect us from dangers from abroad. These are the people that chase transnational criminals. I don't think any of us in this chamber would be willing to go do that. It's tough work. It's brutal work. They put their lives at risk. Not only do I think we should give them their paychecks, I think we should say thank you. Thank you for being willing to do this job. And I'll end with this to my colleagues. We have to eat our own dog food. If we don't eat our own dog food, we will get disconnected permanently from the people that we serve. If we're willing to accept a paycheck that is 3-4 times what the average American makes, and we deposit that every month, we say, "Well, look, I got to pay the bills." I don't care how wealthy you are. If somebody's a multimillionaire or not a multimillionaire, 175 grand a year is a lot of money. Certainly enough to pay the bills. Just ask the people who make 3 times less than that. They figure out how to make the bills. And this isn't about giving up the paycheck or giving up money, which, by the way, I think we should. Like, I don't think we should get paid retroactively. I think we should just say, hey, look, you didn't do your fundamental duty, which is to fund the government. And if you have a policy dispute, then do the hard work. Go into the rooms and make the calls and go out there and persuade your colleagues. But in the meantime, don't punish the workers. Don't punish the workers. I grew up coming to America in the 70s and 80s. I looked at Democrats like Tip O'Neill and JFK. These were Democrats that said, above all else, we are the party of the working man and woman of this country. We are for the people who built this country. The very wealthy, they're just fine. They're just fine. But we focus on the working men and women of this country. And what drove me to run for office, not what I expected ever to do in my life, believe me. Never did, but I do consider it a great honor. Every day, including today, beautiful sunny day, I see the Capitol, I'm like, my God, what would my mom and dad think if they were alive? That their youngest son gets to work in the United States Capitol. It's crazy. It's literally, you know what my mom would say? Only in America. Only in America. But there's 260,000 families that aren't feeling the love right now. The least we could do today is say we join you in that shared sacrifice. We join you so that we can understand what it's like to have to leave here and say, hey, yeah, not good. We're not going to get a paycheck because we didn't do our job. And if we don't do that, what do you think the message it is? You're much more elegant than I am. I think the accent does you 80% of the bidding there. But what do you think that says? What is it? Here's my question. What does a signal of saying, no, 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 we insist on getting paid 3-4 times what the average American makes. We're not willing to sacrifice anything because maybe we're special. Is that the message that's sent? Yield back.
Think about that. A TSA worker or a FEMA responder has to explain to their kids why the pantry is empty because of a political stalemate in D.C. Meanwhile, the people causing the stalemate are depositing $175,000 a year checks. This is why the disconnected elite label is sticking in 2026. The leaders aren't living in the same reality as the team.
What I hear Senator Moreno saying in a very eloquent way, yes, there are varying degrees of wealth in this chamber. But we all make $170 grand a year. And that's a fortune for most Americans. I'm not saying that senators don't earn that. This bill's not meant to punish anybody. I know some senators who work so hard that 170 grand a year is probably equivalent to about $11 an hour. I mean, they're working all the time. This isn't about that. This is about shared values. This is about sending a message to our colleagues at TSA and elsewhere in DHS that we understand that we're trying to get government back open. But in the meantime, we're going to try in our small way to share your experience. So I would ask my colleagues, please, I don't like to talk too much about doing the right thing because I think everybody in this body wants to do the right thing. We just disagree sometimes over what the right thing is. But honestly, I don't see how any one of my colleagues can disagree with either the spirit or the letter of this resolution.
If you think it's time for no results, no pay to become the law of the land, hit that like button. Subscribe now to join the channel that holds the vault accountable. Should Congress be paid during a shutdown? Type pay or vault in the comments.